Hi folks, Jennifer Nelson here, founder of Scout Real Estate. Glad you're listening in. I created Pocket Hours podcast to elevate our game and help us all learn from the best. I have interviewed some of the top producers in our industry about best practices, among many other things. We also tackle industry issues and changes with great conversation from many of our leaders. And the best part is you get clock hours just for listening in. After you have listened to 3 episodes, just email info@scoutrealestate.com to answer a few easy questions for the interview, and you will receive your certificate. Meanwhile, enjoy listening and learning, and go out there and be the agent you would hire. Hello, folks. Jennifer Nelson here with Pocket Hours Podcast, and I'm a little bit tired on this Friday morning, just going to be honest, but I'm also excited because these professionals sitting on this call with me right now have agreed to give up some time, more than they anticipated already with our technical difficulties here at the beginning, but we're going to get launched, and it's going to be a great conversation talking about some of these changes in our industry that are really important both for us as realtors and to our clients. And so I wanted to do a couple disclaimers and then introduce our panel, and then we'll get going right away. For those of you joining us and are listening to this later, I'm thrilled because this is an important conversation. This is a conversation that I'm excited to bring to you as realtors that are brand new or seasoned to say, what are other high producing agents saying about these changes in our industry? So we're going to get started. What is this not? This is not a discussion about commission numbers or particular rates. Given what you're about to hear, that's going to make even more sense. But as we know, that is against the law. That is against our antitrust laws to be discussing what it is that we charge or presuming that there is a fixed rate for any sort of compensation for what we do. So we're not going to be talking about specific numbers. What is this? This is a conversation to say, how are we navigating the changes that have come across in our industry since the National Association of Realtors settlement? It is a discussion to talk about how are we establishing value. How have we, and if that has shifted now at all, what does that look like? And how those changes are helping and or hurting our clients in the industry. This is a big change. It's national news. We are talking about it with clients. I know I am, and I'm sure these folks here are as well. And I wanted you to get the benefit, listeners, to hear what these folks are saying about some of these changes. So with all that said, and our disclaimers in place, I want to introduce our panel. We have my friend Henry Shim, who, for those of you that are listening, I have to just call him out for a second. He's in basketball shorts, folks. I just want to say that right now. But I love that. That is truly Henry, and we're glad that he's here. Who cares what you're wearing? You're a king in this industry, and I'm glad you're here. Robin Sheridan, also a good longtime friend of mine. We used to be at the same office, and killer business. Glad you're here, Robin. Thank you. Kelly Malloy, who I had to twist her arm to be on this call because she continues to not see herself as a leader in this industry while the rest of us see her as a leader. So I'm glad that she's here. Thank you, Kelly. And Kristine Milkcovich, thank you so much also for being here. Been on the podcast before. I love her wordsmithing, as I know that she does, but also just her attention to detail with her clients. You've probably seen her band running around West Seattle, the Milkcovich team taking care of their clients. So thank you, panel, so much for being on the call.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to just say for a minute, we're going to start sort of back in 2019. All of us were practicing real estate then, and our Northwest Multiple Listing Service decided, because they got wind of what was coming down the pike in a class action lawsuit, and said, let's go ahead and get ahead of this. And in 2019 made some changes to say we're going to publish the Selling Office Commission, referred to for the rest of this podcast as SOC. So let's go back there, if you will, with me just for a minute, panel. And first of all, if you have any reaction to that as it came down the pike. So those changes happened. Did you have a reaction to that? How did you think that laid out? And how did it change how you did business or with your clients? Anybody can start talking. That'd be great.
I remember hearing the news, and the first thought, Jennifer, was, wow, people don't talk about the cost of doing business in real estate to their clients. So I think the first initial thought was just like, I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing, that there was not always this 100% transparency or accountability to making sure that you were front loading that conversation with every person that you met as a potential client. So that's just my gut first response.
Yeah, a little
Little
surprising on some
shocking.
level
Yeah.
because, yeah, okay. Kelly, you were about to speak, I think.
2019, I feel like I was just kind of, I wasn't new, but I was really building my business at that point on my own. And so I was like, oh, wow, that happened in 2019. So for me, I kind of feel like that's always been there.
Okay.
It's sort of foggy. I remember everybody thinking that it was going to be really disruptive and it just being this little blip. And it was actually kind of a nice thing to have it all out there and just to be able to talk to clients about how I get compensated. Because I remember my first house purchase back before I practiced in this industry, and it never even occurred to me to know how my real estate agent got paid. So it turned out to be a good thing, I thought.
Definitely agree that that was just kind of part of what we did. And so people not knowing was, for me, it was a surprise, right? Everyone else has their 9 to 5, everyone has their corporate jobs, their tech jobs, whatever it is. Everyone gets paid and compensated. And so when that became like on the forefront, and like you said, Jennifer, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be a disruptor. People are going to talk about this more. It's like, well, why weren't we already talking about it? I feel like most were, but again, it sounds like they weren't. So I guess it was a good thing that it got pushed into the forefront in these conversations, like everyone's saying, because again, transparency is important, and everyone needs to make a living, and so to have that conversation from the get go, hopefully clear stuff up for your buyers and your sellers.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's fast forward then to what change has happened January 1, which we know from the National Association of Realtors settlement made law that any buyer would need to have a buyer broker agreement conversation and signature prior to us rendering any services of real estate with them. I'll share just a little bit about my reactions to say I've been practicing buyer broker agreements for pretty much my whole career. So I was like, yeah, got it, doing it. But I know a large part of our industry had not been practicing those. And it was a little Wild West out there. It was a little bit like someone could get referred to you and call you and say, I want to go see a house. And you'd say, sure. And you'd go open a door and thus established your relationship, which wasn't even established at all. So, how did those changes of now having a buyer broker agreement hit you and your individual businesses?
I was definitely that person. I was like, what? You want me to show you a house? Yes, let's go. I'll show you 10. I'll spend the whole weekend with you. And so this is good practice for me. It's easy. I have no problem because it makes me feel better about me and my practice. And someone said, well, what is the true benefit, outside of everything I went through? And I was like, well, our commitment to each other. And it's really important. I'm such a committed person that, yeah, I'll show you 20 houses, but this for me also allows me to feel that you're in it as much as I am. That's why it has not been hard for me to ask people to sign up.
Yeah, nice.
I would have the opposite experience, Jennifer, that you shared, and maybe even to echo Kelly, is we never had buyer broker agreements. So we were sort of like, wow, first of all, what a miss, because to the point you both just made, it solidifies that bond and that relationship, and like we're in this together. But we had been buzzing around for a number of years, almost 11 for me and almost 22 for my counterpart, my sister Lisa Milkcovich. So it was a good education on how much stronger our value proposition could have been if we had been leading with that. So it's kind of been a little bit of a blessing. It's really helped us sharpen up that side of introduction. I think the other thing too is that there were those few people over those years that went off and flirted and got their head turned somewhere else in being fully transparent. And I think having that Form 41 sort of just helps to roadblock that initially, obviously providing great service and rapport and connection and all of those things. I would say I'm glad that I'm sort of being forced to up my game in that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
This sort of leads to another question of someone that called me that's like, I'm not signing anything. And then, right, you're kind of like, well, I mean, then I don't show her a house because she won't sign anything, but someone else is going to show her a house and not have her sign anything. So there's also that part.
I think I'm the exact opposite. I understand that we now have to do it, but in the past, Jennifer, that was part of your intake with your new clients. For me, I never wanted to sign a buyer's agreement. It was different because I just wanted to show good faith. If you didn't like me, walk away. We could have a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 100-day, whatever we're doing now. But before, I was just like, hey, if we don't connect, our synergies aren't at the same place. Like, I want you to be able to find somebody else. I don't want you to be stuck working with me because we have a contract. And so now, even with the new forms, I put it in there where you can cancel this at any time. And again, I'm probably bucking the trend, and maybe not, but it's one of those situations where if you and the client, you and the buyer, in this case, don't get along, like, I don't want you to be stuck. And vice versa. If we don't get along, like, we're just not going to fit. And then to find out later they close on and say, but I have this contract. I need to get compensated for it. I don't think that's fair either. So I do it begrudgingly. Again, I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It makes sense for, I've had clients where our searches span 5 years. It's not every weekend. It's not even every month, but it's a situation where we do put a lot of time and energy into working with our clients. So I 100% understand the reasoning behind of it. But for me, I would never want to work with someone where we didn't get along or we weren't in the same pace and where we wanted to be. And so again, I am probably the broker that says we do it because we have to moving forward. But for me, I will give you any chance to get out of it without being uncomfortable, because let's just part ways. If you don't like me, I don't like you. You don't like my work style, because again, I'm one broker. There's tens of thousands of out there. But again, it's one of those things that we have to do it now. It makes sense. I get the dynamic behind of it, transparency, and going through all the motions with your clients from the beginning instead of halfway through, right? It's okay, there's a compensation that I'm going to receive and how many hours I put into it, whatever it might be. I know that at the end of it, if we do find you a home, I'll get compensated for it. No one can work for free, not in this economy. No one can work for free with friends and family and kids and everything else. And so there are safeguards now. And it probably helps us as brokers more than it helps the other side, right? And so again, we need that too. Because again, there's a lot of people who will take advantage of our schedules and our efforts and our reputation to get to certain things. And so I see it at both ways, but for me, it's different because that's just not how I work. I mean, I am the casual broker that wants to make people happy, but I'll also tell them don't buy. You could love it. I'll tell you why not to buy it. And so I think it's different for everybody. But again, it's a rule. It's a law now, and so we have to do it. And so we'll plan accordingly moving forward.
I love it. It was great. I remember that you did that, Jennifer, and I always admired that practice, and I always sort of wanted to take on that practice, but I only did it a couple times over the years. And I think I just sort of got into that. You roll with the habits that you have and they're working for you, and you just sort of continue down that path. But when that came along, I frankly thought it made a lot of sense. And like Kelly, I've shown people like 20 houses and they haven't bought anything, which is fine. You decide when the time is right for you to buy or not to buy. But we're on sort of a team here, and we're operating, in everybody's best interest. And if we have an agreement, as to what that looks like, and that everyone is serious about the process, I think that can only benefit us. So I was pleased. I don't even show a house now without that agreement because, we all need to be, moving in the same direction. So I liked it.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of goes back to that, with this new form, right? Like we said, like someone would call me, of course I'd go show them a house. It may have come to something or not, that didn't matter. But now if someone calls you, wants to go see a house, do you meet them with the form and make them sign the form before you enter the house? Like, what do you mean you make them sign before you show a house?
I don't meet them in person at a house. One, I think, well, frankly, it could be really dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, I try not to make a completely cold lead at a house like that, but I usually have a conversation with them over the phone. I tell them about the law. I think that just because I have a legal background, like I'm very nervous about like as soon as reasonably practical and what that means, because frankly, it's practical unless you're like literally at an open house and the house is next door to have them sign an agreement within a reasonable time frame. That's just my interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks.
when this came into law, just from my perspective, since I've been practicing it so long, I was a little bit mad. I'm going to be honest with you, because it was an edge. It was one of my edges.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when I sat down with a buyer for a buyer consult, I had a form that said, hey, you're going to interview other buyers agents. They're not going to have you sign anything. I do, and here's why.
That's
And the
awesome.
way how I framed that was to say, legally speaking, this isn't worth the paper it's printed on, just so you know. So I am not in the business of pursuing a commission from people who don't want to work with me, to Henry's point, but I am absolutely in the business of solidifying our relationship, because I'm a little bit old school and I'm not polyamorous when it comes to my business. So I want a commitment, real honestly. And I joke about it with them and say, hey, this is for us to say, am I actually working for you exclusively? And would you call me your realtor? And therefore, we're going to have such better results because of that commitment and defining our relationship than we are if I'm just out there opening a door for you and we've never established any sort of relationship. So did that cause me to lose some people? 100%. Some people were like, I'm not signing it. And I'm like, absolutely fine. You don't have to. And does it mean that once you've signed it, you're stuck with me? Absolutely not. To Henry's point, if we don't like each other, bye. Have good luck. I'll refer you to my worst enemy in the industry. Just kidding. I always joke and say that Scott Monroe, we're friends, but whenever I have a terrible client, I always give him Scott's number. So he can handle it. He can deal with it. So I guess for our listeners' sake, I want to say, while you can, to Henry's point, be begrudgingly sort of move forward, I think there's ways to frame this to a client's benefit.
I, right now, this moment, am helping a couple buyers that were referred through our network. And already I'm thinking, wow, I've had multiple emails. I've shown them 2 homes. I have to get into the habit, like just now sitting here, like, wow, like I still haven't fully owned just the rhythm or the cadence of that. So it's a very good conversation. Thank you for reminding me.
The difference between exclusive and limited on that form is interesting, because I have had people say, we don't really know you, but we've heard of you. We really want to go see this house. And I might say, great, here's the form by law that you need to sign, but here's the limited box checked. And then after we show this house, we'll sit down together and figure out if this is a fit. But
smart.
But starting to have that form be sort of practice all the time, either way, right?
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
Or there's
Jennifer.
the person that says they won't sign a form.
Kelly, I want you to remember the comment you just made, because I think this is important for our conversation. And that's to say, if someone calls you out of the blue, referral from somebody, we heard about you, someone told us to call you, we really want to see this house. Looks like they're looking at offers this afternoon, but it fits us perfectly. What are you required by law to do? And so according to what I've understood, and I'd love for you all to come in on this, is that we are to use that form if we are in fact rendering real estate services, and showing a house is definitely rendering real estate services. So the beauty about that form is that there's a box in there for limited and or exclusive. So limited meaning one-off. These are the one-offs that we say, hey, we need you to sign this just because we need to establish by law that I'm rendering service for you. That's all this says. And then once we've shown that house, I want to sit down with you and have a consultation to see if I'm the right fit to help you get where you want to go. In which case, I would have you sign this exclusive box, right? That's the only way I work. So if we're talking about the one-offs, that's how I think we can handle it. And then Kelly, you were saying something about that.
I was saying that I've gotten a call from someone who's wanted to see a couple of houses and is also looking at elsewhere outside of Seattle proper, and said, I just wanted to go see this one house and this agent wanted me to sign a form, but I'm not signing any forms.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's the law. So she's actually doing what she's supposed to be doing. Then I was sort of in that position of like, well, she wants to go see this house in West Seattle and she won't sign any forms. So what do?
You don't show the house. Yeah. So I think what's beautiful about this is that if that particular client calls 4 different agents, which by the way is clue number 1 to me about why I may not want to work with them, but that's okay. If they call 4 different agents and all 4 agents are saying the same message, which by the way is law, then that client has to figure out, oh, all right, the only way for me to see this house is for this thing to be signed. If another agent decides they're going to show it anyway, that's on them. But I don't want to get in the middle of some sort of legal repercussion. Robin is our resident JD here, but this sort of stuff on a national level is, we're not kidding around here. And I don't want to be the first one in a lawsuit losing my license because I happen to show some person who I have no relationship with whatsoever a house because they needed me to rush and do it, right? That seems silly.
I'm totally with you. I get that. But there will be
Yeah.
that agent who's like, sure. And then they'll get the client. I don't know. It's still so obscure. It's,
Yeah.
what about those sites that you can search and you can just go see this house now? And then that random agent shows up. They don't even know each other. Like, are they making them sign something when they show up to that house?
They are. And Julia was supposed to be on this call from Redfin. And because one of the questions is, how is Redfin handling this when you can sign up, just to your point, Kelly, and do it? And they are absolutely either meeting the client at the house and having them sign on their phone and or sending that to them as they make the appointment. They have to initial that form before they see the house. So those are being implemented sort of across the board, even with those who cares what agent's going to open the door, we just want to see the house firms. So let's go to the fact that our Northwest MLS did not opt in to the NAR. I always say that. I want to make sure I say that right. NAR. I always say NRA. Very different organization. Completely different organization. So the NAR, we did not opt in. And for listeners that aren't familiar with that, what that means is we said we have already made the changes that we feel are important for transparency to our buyers and to our clients. So we don't need to do what is happening nationally from that lawsuit. One of which the changes is to actually hide all commissions. Talk to me about when you learned that that was one of the changes from this lawsuit. What did you think of it?
For me, it instantly underscored how important it's going to be talking regularly and to be able to communicate that. Because my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, for my esteemed colleagues here and Jennifer, is that without it being advertised, it can still be a discussion. You can still be talking about that offering. And I believe you can also have it animated on personal websites. And there are various ways to still market that information. Do I have that correct? As far as the percentage
The
being
compensation,
announced?
you mean?
Yeah, compensation, excuse me.
Yeah, somebody else could jump in here too. My understanding is one of the reasons this lawsuit came into being was because people were saying that there was commissions, inflations, that there wasn't transparency about who and how was getting paid. And so what feels very antithetical to me is the response that the NAR, which is to say, well, we're not going to publish any of it. Buyer and seller, you guys are going to have to go negotiate that on the side, but none of this is going to be publicly displayed. Am I, Robin, you want to speak to that?
No, I think that's exactly what they were saying. And it would just be basically reversing what we had done in 2019, which we'd all agreed in the end turned out to be a really good thing for buyers, so they understand the compensation and now, understand I'm getting ahead of myself about, I guess, what their responsibility might be in certain situations. So I don't even remember what your original question was, but I do know that in the states where now it's not being published, I've heard it described as very chaotic right now as this sort of settles and people try to figure out what each seller is willing to offer, if anything. And there's a lot of phone calls and it just sounds like the Wild West. So I'm happy to Washington State and for being progressive and for not taking on that particular change.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, I think it just creates a little bit more clarity to Robin's point, like seeing it. And that's all I know in the short or long 11-year tenure that I have in the industry. I think it just is a stabilizer because you already know kind of what's going on right there in front of you from a visual standpoint. So
I think it's backwards. Why would we, initially I'm trying to think back 20 years. I don't think it was published on the Northwest MLS and then it got switched to it's being published. The rest of the country, NAR, they're moving backwards because we want that transparency. The consumer wants to know what we're getting compensated for or how much, and to have that hidden away, it's not my practice, but there are probably brokers out there in the Redfin model where I don't think they're doing it. It's a hybrid version now, but they give a rebate. If we knew that there was a $500 commission, I would still show the home, but if a client said, hey, and again, it's not my practice and everyone else can do what they want. They want a refund or a rebate. Like that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work, right? We all have a value that we bring to our clients. And again, everyone deserves to get compensated. Maybe some people get more, some people get less, but I think that just adds a cloud of mystery of like, oh, they're getting, a 10% commission or a flat fee commission, whatever it might be. It's like, again, I think it just convolutes everything. And so I personally, on the professional side of things, love the transparency of saying, this is what we're getting. This is what I'm getting. And again, everyone's going to make their own choice of like, I want this or that. I was like, well, this is what they're offering. And this is what we get. And if you're okay with that, because there's going to be, when we tour homes, we see 10 houses. And those 10 houses could all have different, commissions, flat fees, whatever it is. And so, again, I think it helps the buyer know what we're getting compensated for. And, all different price points have different commissions. Everything is, again, because it's transparent, it just, I think, alleviates a lot of the what ifs where, hey, Henry, are you getting paid on this one? And I've had clients now reach out to me. And again, it's all on the MLS if you search or if you look on different websites. But it's like, what are you getting paid on this? Do I need to come up with the money? And it's like, oh, no, just look at the website, scroll down, 3/4 of the page, or it's on the front page, whatever it is. And now they know. And so there's less worry on their part of, hey, I need to come up with 3%. I need to come up with 2.5%, 2%, whatever that number is. And so I'm all for it. I think it's backwards. It's asinine that they're hiding it because now the consumer, in parallel with having to sign a buyer's agreement, they don't know what it is. So it just adds another layer of, let's have a conversation about this instead of when we should be, hey, let's have a conversation about the home that you're looking at, the home that you're buying. Let's focus on what really matters is getting into you the home that you want to get. And so I'm so glad that the MLS is doing, the Northwest MLS is doing what they're doing. They opted out and we know what's tried and true and what's fair. And so I'm all for it.
Henry just brought up a really great point. Clearly, I don't work for the Northwest MLS and I don't work for NAR. However, I just wanted to continue to give another shout out to Washington State and the Northwest MLS because about 6 months ago, I was in Washington, D.C. at a housing symposium through a community group called the LGBTQ plus Real Estate Alliance that I'm a member of, and I'm on the board of directors. My point of bringing that up is that when I was in D.C., at a NAR reception, because we were on an ERG, but a community resource group that they're obviously hosting and bringing in during these symposiums, is everybody at NAR could not believe how far ahead Washington was, how proactive, how they took a stance, how they got ahead of all the forms classes. And it was really cool. Like I said, even though I don't work for the Northwest MLS, it was this proud moment of like, hey, we've been, and not to be dismissive or trite, but, in these receptions, I was like, we've been talking about this for darn near 2 years. So just made me think of that with listening to Henry. It's really, really great advantage that we had.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun on a personal level for my business to sort of say, I'm so glad that the rest of the nation just caught up to what I've been doing for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to be, not to toot my own horn, but I do sometimes in meetings just be able to say, this felt like a no-brainer to me a long time ago. So I'm really grateful that now everybody's sort of on the level playing field with that.
Yeah, that's great.
Pocket Hours is brought to you by Scout Real Estate. Hi, I'm Jennifer Nelson, owner at Scout Real Estate. I started this firm with the vision of doing things differently, with our focus on legendary service for our clients and creating a community of producing agents to spur each other to do higher quality work. If you are interested in learning more about how a small group of like-minded brokers have come together to have some fun while doing a lot of business, reach out to me, 206-227-7966, or email jennifer@scoutrealestate.com. I promise you this, fun is a high priority for me, but so is winning. So if you appreciate those two things, you might be interested in Scout. Looking forward to hearing from you.
One of the things that's come up around this is we have a Form 41, as Kristine has talked about, where we sit down with buyers and say, here's what we're going to provide for you, and here's how we get paid, and here's the rate we charge for the services we provide. Now let's fast forward to you're representing that buyer, you've signed that form, you've established a compensation amount, and you're representing that buyer in a multiple offer situation. In that multiple offer situation, there are some other brokers that are saying, I don't need a commission. So how do you then navigate that with your buyer that you've signed this agreement with to help them get the house that they want, not having your commission stand in the way?
That's my biggest fear is like, how do I know that? I'm putting in an offer. There's 5 offers. I don't know what the other 4 are.
Yeah, I haven't encountered that. I have been on the selling side where I was fielding multiple offers. That situation did not arise. So it hasn't been something I've had to encounter. I'm not going to change my practice in how I write offers. I suppose I could get a phone call. I don't know what that would look like. What do you guys think?
I'm on the same page as Rob. Just recently, I had an offer review on Tuesday. No one put that in their contracts. We had 3 offers. I had
and so
submitted
3
a few
offers, Henry.
Monday.
3 offers. My question isn't to Robin too, because I haven't had a multiple offer situation yet since this law passed. So in those offers, you said no one did that. Everyone just put what your seller was offering.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So that was there. And I've had other listings, same thing. I've never had someone say, hey, your 3%, your 2.5% that we provided, we're taking 0 off of it. So maybe that changes in the future, but it seems like I've seen, and there is no standard, but the commissions have adjusted here a bit this year on the seller brokerage compensation. But I haven't seen that. And again, with escalation clauses, whether you have that in there or not, everyone's escalation isn't the same. Again, it adds another layer for us of we got to do a little bit more math to see what the net proceeds are to the seller. But with the 3 offers that I had on Tuesday, they were all different ceilings. And so none of them had, hey, we're taking 0 or we're taking less, but all the top escalation prices were very different. And so, yeah, I haven't run across that. And again, I've written a lot of offers this year, and that has not been a point of contention on any of them. And I think, we've done 25-ish deals this year so far, and none of that has crossed my plate yet.
Well, right. I mean, it's only been since August. So I just feel like we're all still fresh.
I did have one from a discount brokerage that had the same compensation, but broken down differently, and I identified them in that manner and how they were breaking it down. I can talk more about it later if you want to ask me more questions.
Okay.
I will take that back, Robin. You're right. I had one where they were giving a rebate back to their client for closing costs. And so that was on page 1. And that was on another form 34. But I haven't had it directly where it's pays 0 and then the buyer's compensating the selling broker. So I've never had that yet.
We had a broker here at Scout that had that exact circumstance where she was in a multiple offer, and the one that won that multiple offer was because they were not asking the seller to provide any selling office commission, thus netting the seller, right, whatever percentage more, and that the buyer was willing to pay their broker off to the side or out of their own pocket and not take any SOC. So the question is that going to become a trend specifically in multiple offers where there's now another lever that a buyer can pull to say, hey, I'm willing to pay my own SOC in order to advance my offer higher because the seller's not having to pay it?
100% that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can see where that would be a window of opportunity. Again, to the panel, I have not had that happen yet, but it's likely possible coming.
That's so bad though, right? I mean, not to interrupt you, but that's so bad because what about the clients that are trying to get into their first home?
Yeah.
Maybe they can't sell their stock or borrow off their 401k. That creates an unfair advantage to the person that has more cash in their savings account.
100%.
That just convolutes everything. And so, again, not to say that there's a standard commission for everything and it should be that way, because again, price points, locations, whatever it is, but it feels unfair. If someone wants to buy a home and they're willing to pay what it is to get it, but now they have to come up with more cash they don't have, now they can't buy the home. Like, how is that?
And someone would say that means they can't afford the home.
Yeah, and that's terrible to say that because in theory, they can. They just can't do it with an extra down payment plus paying a selling off commission. So actually, it's a great topic of conversation, but that sounds terrible. I hate that.
Thanks for fearing us, Jennifer. Now we're going to look for that.
Well, hopefully that isn't happening, but this is happening. And this is my second question to you all, is to say you have signed the buyer broker agreement at whatever said fee that your business requires of buyers. You get into whether it's a multiple offer or not, and the seller is offering less than what you have agreed to in your buyer broker agreement. So there, for listeners, there's a discrepancy between what you and your buyer have agreed to the percentage of what the fees you are getting paid and what the seller's willing to pay. There's a gap. Who makes up the difference and how do you handle that?
It depends if it's multiple offers or I'm the only offer.
What if you're the only offer?
I'm going to ask what I agreed on with my buyers from the seller.
And if the seller says no,
then I'm going to go back to my buyer. So plan B, go back to my buyer and see if they will cover the difference.
okay. And is
Plan
that part
C?
of, Kelly, what you say? When you're having your consultations, is that clear to a buyer up front?
Yes.
So let's talk about if there's a discrepancy, right? We're going to first ask the seller to make up the difference. If they don't, you'll need to make up the difference. So they're aware of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that true for the rest of you?
I was just going to say, I think this underscores that the front loading and the, creating the really role play with the client at that first introduction, that first interview consultation. I like that you term it that way, Jennifer. I really love that you always say consultation. It sounds so much warmer than interview, but I just think all of us, I'm personalizing it for myself, just owning that conversation and really being able to talk about worst case, best case scenario. Not that we would necessarily say it that way to our consultation client, but I do think that that's going to really set that conversation up. So if the inevitable that you just shared, Jennifer, comes up, and to Kelly's point, then it's a little, I'm sure, 100% smoother conversation to have.
It just depends. It depends on the delta. Like some differences are going to be tolerable. Maybe I'm in the minority on that, but it depends on where you set your original commission, right? On that new document. And if you want to amend it for that particular house.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point.
It's definitely an option now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that gets me thinking about, I'm sure with all of our tenure on this panel, there has been a time, Robin, you just said it perfectly, like where we as entrepreneurs, the owners of our business, we are the voice. We've made maybe concession decisions to help somebody close or something, went different with their cash or who knows, things are going on in their life. So I think everybody's probably been met with deciding if they want to help, get them through to the end. So I guess it's goes back into that same conversation.
We have had a lot of conversations at Scout recently at our brokerage about establishing value. And if ever there was a more appropriate time to be talking about that, it's now, given the fact that there's some question to our value. I think all of you might agree that there's a decent amount of skepticism in the public eye about real estate agents, period. We're real close to lawyers or attorneys in terms of they're like, hey, they make too much money or they're taking advantage of us or whatever. I mean, if you haven't done an open house in a while, just go do one and you'll feel it as people walk through the door, right? So if ever there was a time for us to sort of reconsider or reevaluate how we establish value with clients, it's now. So some of our conversations have been around how we do that. And that's a question I want you to be thinking about as I tell this quick story. My then partner at the time, Dominic, and I were looking for a financial advisor. And we were referred to 3 or 4 people. This is back 20 years. We had a couple of Zoom calls or a couple phone calls with 3 of them. One of them was this woman over on the East Side, and she came highly recommended. And I remember calling her and saying, we'd like to meet with you to talk about whether, you could work for us. And she said, great, love to have you to the office to chat with you. And Kristine, you may remember this story, but I remember saying, well, I don't really want to drive to Bellevue. So can we have a phone call? And she said, oh, no, I meet with people at my office. So let me know when that works for you. And I was kind of pissed, I'll be honest. I was like, hey, can you make this more convenient for me? But what she had learned in her tenure was that in-person meeting in her office brought such great value in setting up our relationship going forward that she wasn't going to compromise it. So we drove over there. I'm a little pissed on the way there that I have to take time out. We get there, we sit down and talk to her, and she goes over what she's going to do for us. Here's my results, here's my reputation, here's whatever. It was very well done. No doubt she was good at what she did. At the end of it, I said, great, what are your rates? She explained what her rates were, and I said, interesting. You're the 4th person we've met with, and you're the highest one. And she said, yeah, I bet I am. There was no question in her mind. And I remember thinking, wow, the balls or audacity. Sorry. Can I say balls on yeah, it's my
You
podcast.
can
I
do
can say
whatever you
whatever I
want.
want. And she said, for sure, there are people that are saying they can offer the same level and quality of service for less money, but I'm confidently telling you that it's a different level of service. But for sure, if the value or the cost of it is what you're going for, there are plenty of others that you can hire. She wasn't in the least bit defensive. She wasn't in the least bit trying to get my business or manipulate me. She was literally saying, here's my fee. Here's why I charge it. And if you don't want it, it's fine. And I remember walking out and being pissed again and getting into the elevator and saying, shit, I want to hire her.
She's good.
I want to hire her. I want to hire her. Because there was such confidence in what she brought to the table. So I give that sort of as a segue as we wrap up this podcast, because I think one of the things I want listeners to hear more than anything from you all today is about how you believe you establish value to your clients. Because whatever rate you choose to charge, you've got to be able to say, here's why. Here's why I charge it. So each of you, if you'll take a minute to respond to sort of what you think communicates value to your clients.
My whole conversation when I meet people, and I would say probably 90%, 95% is I'm a referral, right? I don't really do marketing. I actually kind of just started doing like podcasts and doing different things. And that's more for Akash and I to, build our brand a little bit more. But when it comes to me, when I go meet people, I tell them it's the experience. It's because I've remodeled 25 of my homes. It's because I could go walk through a house and tell you a million things wrong with the house, even though you love it. And then your perspective changes. It's all the deals that I've done over the last 20 years. It's the reputation I have with, the four of you on this panel right now and all these other brokers and with my lenders and inspectors and everyone else. And so, you hear it often when you talk to people like you're hiring me not just in real estate, but in other careers and occupations, like they get paid more the longer they've been in the business because they hopefully know more. They're more efficient. They're better versed in conversations and can get you to the finish line, whatever it is. And so for me, my biggest thing is like, hey, if you decide to work with me and we're a good fit together, you get my whole Rolodex of life, of 20 years of owning homes and being able to point out like, this is why it makes sense for you. This is why it doesn't. You need to look at the good and the bad instead of just the pretty, right? It's a home. It's where you're going to start your family if you want that, or you're going to be a perpetual bachelor, whatever it might be. You need someone that's not scared to say, just be a yes man. You need someone to, again, call you out on things and say, well, you're saying this, but the reality is that. I think over the years for myself professionally, it's become a situation where I don't mind telling clients what they don't want to hear. I actually love doing that because they don't think about that, because home buying process is the biggest, for most people, the biggest purchase of their life. And it's typically for something bigger as well, whether it's family, whether it's for retirement, whether it's for investment, whatever that situation is. And, everyone wants to close the deal. Like, I'd rather you not buy the house, to be honest with you. Let's go look at 20 more. Let's go look at 5 more. Let's do this. And let's really make sure this is what you want. And so the paychecks are nice. Of course, that's why we work. We have to feed, our kids and pay for a mortgage and car payments and insurance and all that. But also it's, I want to get the finish line with you, knowing that you bought the best house for you and your situation. And so that's where I come from. I tell people, the compensation, like, I actually think I said it in one of my podcasts, and I think I said it in one of your old ones too, Jennifer, like, I should actually get paid a lot more for what I do. And that's not to be brazen and not to be like, hey, I deserve more. But the reality is, like, you're getting so much experience and history in the real estate world when you work with me that I'm saving you money long term. I'm going to make you more money because it's a better investment. It's a better home for resale, whatever it might be. I walk them through that, right? I say, what are you looking for? And, I've met so many new clients here recently, and it's just, they're like, we've interviewed 5 other people and no one spoke the way you spoke. And it's because I don't care if we close this deal tomorrow or in 6 months or a year. It's about closing the right home for you. And so people are like, oh, so you're not going to, you don't want to go and look at houses this weekend and close the deal. It's like, why? If it's not the right house, I'm never going to tell you to buy it. And people are like, oh, okay, great. It's like, oh, you're going to point out everything bad about this house, even though I told you I love it. I'm like, absolutely. I want you to find the home that you love, but I want to tell you everything that's wrong with it because it needs a new roof and a new furnace. And, it's next on a busy street, whatever it is, things that they don't think about because they're so in love with the idea of home ownership. And so that's kind of where I go. It's again,
Okay.
my experience is
Yeah.
what is my add value and why I deserve the compensation that I deserve.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry.
I'll just dovetail on that. I think also a practice of throughout it being, whether it be a 6-month relationship because somebody is getting educated on the market or they have a life event that's going to come up that's going to cause you to actually get into a transaction, or if it's somebody that you work with for a week and you get into a home right away. I think that we can't remind the client enough about also the steps it takes. Like Henry said that, but actually saying it to them, like, Jennifer, here we are 3 days in, we're, through the inspection and that was such a win. We got the new roof, and like actually saying it back to the client, because the more that they hear, because they're running their lives, they're working, taking care of their kids, doing the things, sitting on the freeway. They don't remember that you're doing 14 million different things each day to get them to Henry's point, to the home run. So I think the more that we can actually speak back to them in an appropriate, casual, normal conversation, they go, wow, you did all that this week? Yep, I did. Yep, that's what has to happen to get you to your home run. And really quick, my wife, Chris, likes to say this often, and I love that Henry voiced with passion that actually, we should be making more for the work we do. This is what my wife, Chris, says. If you took all the hours that you work and actually divided what you got on that commission check, and I'm being respectful to all of us on the panel and to my wife being sort of silly and being fun with it. But the reality is, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It is the early mornings when needed and the late nights when needed, as Henry said, to do the right thing for our clients. So that reminded me, when you really break it down, it takes a lot of effort to be a really good, solid real estate broker for our clients. So just a couple ideas that I had on that.
I love that. I just want to input. I can't think of her name. I wish I could right now, but she's been in the business forever. And she used to say, if we actually charged by the hour, oh my gosh, we would have retired a long time ago. But isn't it interesting too, that we can have a $400,000 sale that we'll spend 80 hours on, and we can have a $3 million sale that we'll spend 10 hours on. And so how that all evens out is dependent on our client's needs at the time, right? So we can't really say the more expensive or the less expensive we should get paid. No, because it all sort of evens out. Anyway, Kelly and Robin, back to the question, how do you establish value?
Really what Kristine and Henry said. I mean, Henry was talking, I'm like, And this is why there's so many great agents. And, I'll say that to clients too. Like, you can interview 5 other fantastic agents. They're my colleagues. They're out there. There's a lot of us, but it comes down to who you feel comfortable with and who you sit across from the table with and you connect with. I always go from the heart. My heart and soul is in my job. I do have 5, 10 other things going on and a family and kids and pets and a house. And it's like, but you will always feel like number one. You will always feel like number one to me. It doesn't matter if it takes 1 month or a year. Sometimes I go back to being a birth doula and I charge all my pregnant families the same amount of money. And some people will be like, but what if I'm only in labor for 5 hours? And I'm like, well, you offset the person that was in labor for 32. So everyone pays the same. And that's how, that's sort of a funny sidebar I'll kind of use. And they're like, oh, and it depends the person, I think about the person I'm talking to if it's a relevant story. And, at the end of the day, you have me 110%. You've got my heart, you've got my soul. And I am always so excited to find something they love, and somehow we'll figure out how to get me paid.
All right. Robin.
This was an interesting question because I guess I don't walk into those meetings thinking about that. Maybe I should. Maybe it's a benefit that I don't, because I really treat them as just like a conversation, just getting to know somebody. So not necessarily thinking about my value in that particular moment. But actually, if I think more about it, I think some of the value that I bring is really in relationships and developing that rapport. And I think a lot of people assume my background is, going to be really helpful with contracts. And of course, that's really helpful. But mostly because I was a trial attorney before, my skill set is reading a room very quickly and trying to figure out like how to develop rapport quickly with whoever it is, whether it's the person that walks into the open house or the person you're sitting down to talk to about buying or selling. There's a lot of gregarious, wonderful people in this industry, and they're going to meet a lot of them. And you just have to find that moment to connect. And of course, I'm going to bring these days, because of this coming up, I will bring my stats to the table. I usually do that at the end, actually, after we've already met, to tell them like what my sales history is.
I'm going to recap a little bit of what each of you just said, but before I do, I want to ask you the question, because what we're sitting here with all these faces on this call is a whole lot of time doing this. But there's listeners on this call right now that are saying, cool, I can't go. I've been in this industry 22 years, like I have, 11 years, however long you all have been in. Henry's 20 years. What do I say then to people that are saying, why should we hire you? And just quickly, is there anybody that wants to tackle that question?
I think Robin underscored a really important point. The numbers don't lie. And again, whether you've been doing it for 6 months or 20 years or 11, is that I think showing people, it's great to share. And to Robin's point, we're in a relationship business. We're all about having, good listing skills and having ethics and taking good care of people and getting them to their home run. But I think, I know for me, when I go somewhere to decide if I want to spend my hard-earned dollars on a product service experience, I think seeing the stats, the past success rate, the whole current success predicts future success. So I think that's a really helpful thing to be able to bring some of the data and the numbers, because people go, whoa, okay, well, you must like this. And it seems like you're decent at it because those numbers are pretty good.
Anyone else? Anything to add?
That's such a tough question. I get it. Like, why should I hire you? I'm like, why not?
I love that. I want Kelly's confidence. Please bring it to me.
Why not? So just for purposes, again, of our listeners who are newer to the call, I want to point out a couple of things you said in recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm speaking for you at this point. But Henry, I loved what you said about getting more educated. Go to those inspections and pay attention so that you do get good at identifying the things that could go wrong in a house. Speak up in inspection. Don't be candy crushing over here on your phone while the inspector is doing their job. Your job is to be super present. Henry also spoke about being an expert communicator. And even as he shared his thoughts today on this call, you can see if you were a buyer or seller listening to Henry, you'd be like, I think he might know what he's doing. But it's not necessarily because he's highly skilled, which you are. It's how you say what you know, right? It's how you say what you know. Knowing the market is sort of less important. It's not that it's not important, but boy, is it secondary, I think, to our clients. They want to fit. They want someone like Robin to read the room and be able to say, I see who you are. I think I can help you, and here's how I can help you. Now, my skill set is there too, but let's first go for this relationship between the two of us. Get good at asking really good questions, pay attention to their responses so that you can really formally make that relationship curated to them, right? Not just to, well, all of my buyers sort of thing. Kelly talks about prioritization. You're going to be my number one. You're going to never wonder if I'm taking care of you. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I could feel that when she said that.
Oh, yeah.
And so those buyers and sellers, when she said it, no, that's true. That's not a line. Kelly's going to drop everything to make sure they get exceptional service. And then Robin sort of developing rapport and finding that fit. I love that you just sort of said, I don't know. I guess I haven't thought about how I bring value, but the very fact that you show up the way you show up is the value. And certainly by looking at your numbers, no one's questioning that value, right? They're coming and meeting with you and saying, you're the one. I want to work with you because I feel that fit. So back to those newbies that are saying, gosh, I don't have the years. I always say to my brokers at Scout that are new, you have everything you need. You have everything you need. If you are genuinely you and showing up and caring about their outcome, the skills and the data and all that, we can get that for you. We can help you learn that. But if you focus on really, really serving people, you can't go wrong, right? You can't go wrong. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Good job, Jennifer. Get an amen. Yeah, we're going to do an altar call.
I love it. No. I'm in. I'm coming to your service.
Yeah, right.
You're all hired.
Right on. Well, hey, I don't want to take more of your time, but I am so appreciative to each and every one of you. I really cherish my relationship with all of you individually, and also know that this was not on your plan to give up this much time today. But I really want to thank you in advance for people that are listening that are like, gosh, that was so helpful to hear the authenticity from some of you saying, hey, we didn't practice this before. We're a little bit, this is obscure. We don't know how this is going to pan out. But at the end of the day, what we really care about are our clients. And that really came through today. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening in to Pocket Hours. I hope this has been interesting, fun, made you laugh, made you think, spurred you on to do and implement some new things in your business. I appreciate your time and hope this has been a good use of it, period. Now, go be the agent you would hire.